I've been working on having more patience. I've been working on being more gracious. Can't kill myself for the time I wasted. Learn lessons come with elevation. I've been working on having more patience. I've been working on being more gracious. Can't kill myself for the time I wasted. Learn lessons come with elevation. I'm on a mission to achieve some greatness.
What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, it's a pleasure. It's my pleasure, man. It's always a pleasure to chop it up with my brother, man, and discuss important topics such as this. So,
yeah. So, before we get started, I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is
I think okay, you broke up a little bit, bro. Sorry about that. Oh, I can't hear you now. I can't hear you, Jackie. It says you're on mute. You're on mute. No, can't hear you. That's weird. Yeah, I was hearing you fine, and then all of a sudden, just not hearing you. Okay.
all
I
right.
can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. This is the fourth episode of Lived Experiences. I'm joined tonight with my brother Darren Thomas. Tonight's topic of discussion is the journey of manhood. Did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, Darren?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Darren Thomas. I am 31 years old, originally from South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to be exact. I am married to a beautiful, amazing, smart, awesome woman of God who is, her name is Lauren Thomas. We are parents of two children. We have a 4-year-old daughter named Chloe and a eight-month-old son named Braden, and a pretty happy-go-lucky puppy named Presley. So I am also a digital marketer. I work full-time. I've been in that industry for about 10 years now. Have all my certifications, been featured in Hulu articles in the past. For some of my work, I've dealt with, $1 million advertising budgets on several different advertising platforms such as Google Ads, Facebook Ads, LinkedIn. The list goes on. And I'm also I also love the Lord. I'll put it to you like that. So my wife and I, we dedicate our lives to in everything we do. We just want to bring glory to who we know to be the true and living God. So that's me kind of in a nutshell. I'm also a mentor to a lot of people. And I love to help people. I love to encourage people and help them get to a different place on their journey to better themselves and to put themselves in a position to prosper. So,
yeah. So a little background, Darren is actually one of the few people that I call when I need help. We actually got married around the same time. So he was actually able to help me navigate through some of the difficulties of being a newlywed. So Darren is a real deal great man.
I appreciate that, brother. And I can echo the same sentiments. Jackie, I've known Jackie for probably close to 10 years now, probably.
It's crazy, yeah.
It's really crazy. But, Jackie has been nothing but a supportive brother of mine, absolutely encouraging, just his life, just the way how he lives his life, how he carries himself, how he treats his family, how he treats his children. And observing that is just incredible, and just a great example, I would say, to model fatherhood after. Is the best way I can put it. And then also just in general, a great friend. He'll be there when you need a chat. If you got a burden on your back and you want to just talk something out, and he's always supportive, and I can definitely appreciate that about him.
Thank you.
So
I titled tonight's discussion "The Journey of Manhood,"
mm-hmm.
primarily because I believe that it's always a journey, because I don't think we will ever reach a point where we can say, I know everything there is to being a man. So we will continuously, there's some things that a 90-year-old man doesn't know that a 30-year-old man is really familiar with. So there's always something to learn in manhood. What do you think?
I totally agree. I think that, when you think about the word journey, you think about traveling, right? You think about traversing territory, or, I like to also associate like journeys as like an adventure, if you will. So it's an exploration, right? So how I view the journey to manhood is everything that you mentioned, and then some. It will never stop. For those who understand that life is a process, and if you're not constantly learning, you're not constantly growing at that point. So, I think that it's important to notate, in one's mind, especially on a journey to manhood, that you can never fully arrive at your destination. There's always room for growth, and there's always room to improve on the man that you were yesterday, today.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we feel when we become adults, and I think people get the thought of turning 18 to the point of actually stepping into manhood. I think they get those two confused. So in my opinion, manhood is one of the things where you decide to take up responsibility, and you, for lack of better terms, the burden of what you have to carry as being a man.
True. Absolutely. I would also just add on to that is, I remember back when I was 18, you don't really fully, I don't think you fully comprehend who you are as a man fully, at age 18.
Yeah.
I think that even developmentally, my wife is also a therapist. So she's taught me this, like developmentally, when you're still in your teens, your brain is still in the process of developing and growing. So, I think that the journey to manhood is exploring who you are, who you want to be. And then at the end result of it all, it falls back on that responsibility piece that you mentioned. It's, do I take accountability for my own actions? And then also for the actions that I have committed, and I've gotten a result from those actions that I've committed. Am I willing to follow through with those either consequences or those results, and then build upon that? I would call it ROI, return on investment, because essentially you're building on your character. You're building on, learning what you like from what you don't like, learning, how to conduct yourself, as a man, and how to be respectable, how to be just, a person of character, really. So,
yes. I feel that there are too many people that have the legal age of manhood without having taken the responsibility of what it entails. And I think that in itself has led our society down the wrong path, because men are natural leaders. Not saying that women can't as well. There are certain arenas where women lead far better than men. But I feel that the man was designed to be a leader.
Sure.
And I feel like too many feel that once they reach that age, that the age is what qualifies them. And because they have only been qualified by age, they have not been tested. Their character hasn't been tested. Their leadership skills have not been tested. Their financial skills have not been tested. And then we have so you're unqualified in all these other areas, rather except age. And then you find yourself in a relationship.
Right.
And you were not qualified to lead that woman. You're only a man by age, and not by a man by mental capacity. And like you said, accountability. I feel too many times we are not accountable for our actions, because it's easier to blame someone else. I think we have to work as a society, and just as men ourselves raising up sons and children, we have to raise them up to understand that I'm holding you accountable. Like you're not just in trouble. I'm holding you accountable, so that way, when the time comes, you know how to accept accountability.
Absolutely. And I think the word that comes to mind is entitlement. Because a lot of guys, sometimes, they get to that age of 18 because the world has deemed that as the age that you become an adult. Well, majority, if, for people who are in the United States, that's obviously, the age to become a quote unquote adult. I think that we've programmed ourselves to be entitled to think that we got it all together at that point, when we really don't. There is a lot of growth that needs to happen. And I would say this, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I was saying that, a lot of guys, from my experience and from what I've seen and observed, is that, we're finding ourselves between that age of 18 and 30. We're really exploring what our options are in our career path, our spiritual journey, and just our mental capacity as well, just how we approach things in life. And that also ties into who influences us, right? Who we hang around with, because the people who you hang around with is essentially going to influence your mannerisms, or, how you conduct yourself, or your thought processes. That's a proven fact. You can't hang around pigs and expect not to, either be considered you acting like a pig, or people just observe you and look at you different and be like, whoa, you're in a pigsty. Like, do you even realize, and I think that, when we talk about that entitlement piece, it's, a lot of guys, I would say, have to have a wake up call, and where, they have to recognize and realize where they are on their journey. And then once they identify where they are, okay, well, let's list some things that you're currently seeing from a negative perspective and then a positive perspective. And then how can you move forward and take, list actionable items to grow.
Yeah. So for me, I navigate manhood through this lens. I will not do anything to intentionally harm or hinder someone. And in return, I don't tolerate anybody intentionally hindering or harming me or my family.
Right.
What would you say the lens that helps you navigate through manhood? Like, what would you say helped you get to where you are now?
Oh man, that's a very long-winded question. Wow. I'll say this: the journey to manhood for me, as I mentioned earlier, it has not ended. It has not stopped. But I will say that it takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of self-investigation and self asking yourself hard-hitting questions, right? I remember a point in my life where, I changed my college major probably like seven or eight times, and I had no idea what my future was going to look like or what I even wanted to do. And I was very young, and I remember, I spent a lot of time praying about what my next step should be. And then until I finally, felt in my heart and in my mind that I wanted to pursue communication. A communication degree. I never, ever, ever thought that I would end up in marketing, ever. I graduated college. I didn't even have a plan in place for a job. I was, I had expected to get offered a job through the place I was interning at, but that didn't pan out. So I didn't really have anything else in place. And I remember, trying to think like, what am I going to do? Like I got rent due the next week. I'm no longer in school. So I used to have like 3 on-campus jobs at the time. So, I had to juggle that. So this was back in 2014. So like I had to figure it out. And then until finally, an opportunity arose where I was able to work with a marketing agency in Naples, Florida. And when I started there, it just really kind of like jump started my career path, if you will. You know what I mean? And I mentioned all of this because with men, especially in the United States, your career doesn't define who you are, but it really kind of plays a large role in your journey to becoming a man, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of challenges that you have to grow through, which I myself grew through, where I had to learn things from scratch. There were some things in marketing that I had no idea about. I had to put 2 and 2 together. I had to hustle. I had to grind to figure things out. Pull on all kinds of resources. And thankfully, God connected me to the right people where I can learn from them as well. So I think a part of this too is, even outside of your career, is also humbling yourself as a man and realizing, hey, there might be somebody else that may be ahead of you, or a guy that may be ahead of you, but it's okay to learn from them or to kind of sit under their wing just for a little bit so that you can understand what works best for your life, and what not to do, because a lot of the times people, dudes with wisdom, or they've been through some things, they can educate you on, hey, this is what I did, that led me down this path, maybe try to stay away from that path so you can go down a path of positivity and growth. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
One thing that I've learned is that I don't want to be the smartest person in the room.
Amen.
It's better to take that humble posture and be open and willing to learn,
right?
From literally from someone else's mistakes. Because if I can learn from your mistakes, that's maybe 10 years of trying to build something that would fail that I don't have to experience, because you've already shared that experience with me.
Absolutely.
I think as a man, one thing that I will say is we have to unlearn that being a man means being this dominant and aggressive figure.
Right.
Leadership doesn't have to come from an aggressive place. It can just come from my demeanor. I am not the most loud or loud-spoken person, but when I do speak, you will understand that you were not going to disrespect me. So I think we have to get rid of the narrative that you have to be this big, mean, and dominating force in order to be considered a man.
Yep. I totally agree. And I think that the biggest word that stands out to me is ego. And that's guys, that's one of our biggest struggles, right? Is ego.
Yeah.
We want to be if we get into an argument or whatever, it's natural for us sometimes to want to be the alpha, if you will, or who can be the toughest in the room and who can be, the loudest and, or whatever. So I'm not saying all guys operate that way, but I feel like every guy has had those type of feelings before because we're men. We have testosterone, right? It's a natural part of our bodies. Testosterone kind of pushes in that aggressiveness, if you will, in most of us. So, I think that dialing back your ego is something that's important, and not only to, it's not necessarily you avoiding conflict, but it's handling it in a mature way. And then, also, I would even go back and say, like, even as Black men, I feel like a lot of times we get very territorial, and we try to, shoot each other down, when it matters the most, when, collaboratively, if we were able to, just extend a hand, to that other brother and say, hey, look, like, how can we work together? How can we make things, peaceful? I think we would be farther ahead in life. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we see that in countless examples, like Martin Luther King, he was a great example, preaching unity and, obviously, ended up, murdered, but at the same time, he left a large footprint on a lot of people's hearts, you know what I'm saying, and minds. So I think that cutting out ego, dialing back on pride, and recognizing that while you do have to stand up for yourself and you do have to establish boundaries in some instances, in some circumstances, not everybody is your enemy. Not everybody wants to pull you down as like a crab in a bucket. You know what I mean? So that's my philosophy. That's kind of how I approach things. And then another thing is that, if there is a situation where you can't coincide with somebody else, is that remove yourself from that situation. You know what I mean? Find an alternative that works best for you, versus having to go down a path of confrontation that will lead you to prison or jail, or, hurting somebody physically, or, getting into a physical altercation. Because, Lord knows that some people, you just can't get through to them. Some people are just absolutely wild and crazy. And in those situations, you got to remove yourself, because obviously you have a future, you have things in front of you, you have a plan, you have a purpose in life. God has a plan for your life, and it's full of success. It's full of fruitfulness. It's full of prosperity. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta take your wins with your losses. I learned that a long time ago. Even on my journey to manhood, is that sometimes you just can't get through to some people, and you just got to take your win with your losses. It is what it is. Chalk it up as a L for them and a W for you, because you removed yourself out of that situation, and now you have room for doors and opportunities in front of you.
Facts. And lastly, I will say that a major part of being a man is being able to understand and handle your finances. And so I think that we're not going to give out any financial advice because we don't want to be held liable, but it's something that each person should be willing, and it's not even willing, it's a necessity that you learn how to manage your finances, simply because of the fact that when you do decide to go and get into a relationship, even marriage, and you're learning through trial and error, that's not fair to your spouse. It's not fair to your children.
Right.
You should have gotten that in order before you decided to get married.
That's a very, very interesting point, man. I think that marriage, going back to what marriage really is, and just talking about that journey for a man, I think that it really falls back on marriage is a God thing. God created marriage, for men and women in the earth. You know what I'm saying? And so That was the original plan, right? But I think that what I'm getting at here is that when you really think of it, is are we as men, as leaders, really relying on God to lead us when it comes down to marriage, right? When it comes down to proposing, when I initially met my wife, at the time, obviously we weren't married, we weren't engaged. But I had this inkling, I just kind of knew she was going to be my wife. And then countless people as well can't come to us along the journey of us dating, and was basically like, oh, you guys are like, basically prophesied to us that we were going to get married, right? And not only that, before my wife and I even met, there was a man of God that came to a church that she was going to, and told her that basically she was going to meet me a few months down the line. And she had no idea who I was at the time. I didn't know who she was at the time. And we met through a mutual friend, so I knew that God had his hand on our relationship, and that it was going to be fruitful and it was going to be prosperous. But the timing of things was what was important. There was a time where I wanted to propose and it just wasn't the right timing. And I feel like God sent warning and wisdom and like, hey, look, this is not the time for you to propose just yet. And I feel like he was preparing me financially, he was preparing me mentally, he was preparing me physically, just all the different aspects, spiritually, to actually engage in a marriage. And marriage is a very challenging thing. It's not to say that you're gonna have your life made easy, but you guys have to have a plan in place. For those out there who are wanting to get married, you have to be on the same page as your fiance and future spouse. And if it's concerning finances, well, okay, are you guys both working full time? Will you guys have joint accounts together? Where you can share funds. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours. I think that was my wife and I's philosophy, is that whatever is mine is yours, and whatever is yours is mine. So we made it work. Obviously, I was in the beginning stages of my career path, so I was building my way up. But along the journey, my wife was also building her career and building her way up. So, we chipped in and we helped each other. You know what I'm saying? We found ourselves, just continuing to pursue what God had in front of us at the time. So I think that, like I said, we have to be on the same page. And if you're not on the same page and God is not at the head leading you guys to marriage and leading you guys down that path, the road will be somewhat difficult. That's my personal experience, and my thoughts behind it. But a lot of times people rush into marriage without having a plan in place, without understanding, who's doing what, and also, will yours be mine and mine be yours? Marriage is a what is it called? It is it's basically you sacrificing yourself. Really.
Yeah. Just as the man, if you want to be the leader, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and sacrifice yourself. Like, me, bro, there's nothing I won't do for my family. Whatever needs to be done, I will do it, because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that they are okay.
Yep.
All right. And then lastly, let's just, for a little bit of entertainment.
Yeah.
In your household, how do you do dinner plates? A lot of people feel like the man should have the biggest piece of chicken and they should eat first because they bring home the money. How do you tackle it?
To be honest, man, it's kind of like a free for all with dinner for us, especially right now. But I don't hang my hat on having, getting a plate first or whatever the case may be. I have a growing children. So, I tend to prioritize them because I know that they are growing quickly, and they're going through growth spurts a lot of the time, and so their bodies are developing so fast and so quickly. And I'm an adult, right? I'm no longer a toddler, that needs to grow big, into an adult. So, I tend to make sure that they're fed first, and then once they're all squared away, I'll either dish a plate for my wife, or I'll eat, or if my wife is outside with my daughter and they're playing, I'll eat, and then when they come in, they'll eat. You know what I'm saying? So I'll dish a plate out for them. And then obviously my son, he's not old enough to really eat real food yet, so he's eating like the little Gerber, little bucket Gerber meal things. So it's really, man, honestly, I like to view my family as one of my highest priorities, and so I'll put them before me many times. Many times I'll put them before me, and so. That's kind of how I think about it. And then, I wanted to touch on really quick too, Jackie. Earlier in the conversation, we're talking about leadership. I wanted to say this about leadership. Leadership is, it doesn't always mean that you're out in the front. Sometimes leadership means that you are leading from the back. And what I mean by that is that, as men, so I'd say some men, not all men, obviously, but we tend to beat our chest and be like, hey, I'm gonna take this over. You're the Lion of Pride Rock, according to Lion King. You know what I'm saying? You're the one like, I'm leading the ship. I'm leading the ship. And ego tends to creep in, with that task. So, I personally believe that sometimes you have to help people develop their leadership skills. So you have to pour into them, give them the guidance, but step aside and step to the back sometimes, allow them to grow into their leadership. Because if you take over and start leading all the time, how can others, basically step into that role that you're stepping into eventually and lead? Obviously they're going to look at you as an example. But at the end of the day too, experience conquers just regular knowledge. Sometimes you got to put people in place to actually grow and experience what it feels like, so they can actually grow into what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, it's okay to serve as a leader. I think it's important as a leader, to help people build their own foundation. And so that way they are not like, a leader doesn't try to keep people reliant on them. Correct. It's the leader's job to build and help create self-reliant people, so that way they can go out and create more leaders. Absolutely. And I think too many times we think as a leader, it's, I'm the first out front, I'm going to take care of everything. And you're really just crippling the people that are depending on you.
Exactly. And that's exactly my point is that, true leaders develop more leaders. They duplicate themselves and their leadership style and skills into others, that they might be leading. I lead a team at my job, currently, and, I'm training a lot of them to take on my role eventually, you know what I'm saying, or become like me eventually. And that sometimes requires me to take my hands off of things and say, hey, look, no, I'm handing you this. I've showed you how to do it. I've taught you, I've given you the skills that you needed to be successful at this. Now you handle it, and I'm going to watch you develop and grow into what you want to be, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, before we go, I do want to say that just being a man, you need to surround yourself with men who you want your future to look like. And don't take advice from somebody, in my opinion, I don't take advice from somebody who I feel is doing just as good as me or worse than I am. So when I'm taking advice from somebody, that's me saying, I think you're in a great position in life. And I feel as if you have wisdom and information that I don't have access to. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody's in the same place as me, you have the same access to the same wisdom I do. So you have no room to pour into me because your cup is already full.
Right. Understood. Absolutely. You know, I think it falls back on really honestly discerning who, you know, you should connect with as a person, just in general. You know what I mean? You know, I've met, oh my gosh, so many people along my journey that I've, you know, pulled certain teachable moments from, you know, and applied it to my personal life. You know, I mean, I can go down the list and name so many different brothers of mine, and also, you know, leaders and mentors, you know, that I've crossed paths with. But you know, I could say that, you know, I've learned to, as one of my mentors used to say, eat the meat and spit out the bones, right? So like basically grab what you know applies to you and what you feel like you can use to elevate your thinking and elevate yourself as a man. And then for the things that you don't feel like would be essential to your growth, spit it out, get rid of it, discard of it, trash it in your mind, so that you can now, you know, grab the bull by the horns and take off.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Darren. It was an awesome conversation.
It was a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.
Do you have any place where they can follow you, maybe look up your business?
Sure, absolutely. So I have an Instagram profile and Facebook profile at DTS Digital Marketing Services, or service, I should say. And you should be able to find me on either platform, or you could just type in my name, Darren Thomas, and you'll be able to, you know, follow me there. Currently, I'm taking a little bit of a leave on Instagram, so if I don't respond right away, you can just visit my website if you want to schedule or book a session with me. It's at dtsdigitalmarketingservice.com. But yeah, I'm, you know, readily available to, you know, chat through things, help people with their marketing, or just in general, if you know, life advice, tips, happy to help as well.
Just lastly, the man is extremely talented in what he does, just to say the least. So when you book with him, you're going to get top-notch service every time.
Hey, I appreciate that, man. Yep, absolutely. You know, you can check my LinkedIn profile as well. You know, I can leave some links in the comment section as well on Facebook. So for anybody that might be looking for that, but yeah, absolutely. After this live, I'll do that. But you know, you can check my LinkedIn profile. I have 10 plus years of experience, you know, so, you know, had the privilege to work with some really smart people throughout my career path, and really learned a lot from a lot of those people as well, besides me just actually, you know, getting the formal education online and whatnot. So, you know, I definitely am very grateful and very appreciative of those people as well. So, but man, listen, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love you, my brother. And
love you too, bro.
I know this is going to take off and blow up, and man, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be an incredible sight to see. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Have a good evening, bro.
All right. Take care. Thank you, guys. All right. Bye.